She mentioned it the way people mention weather, casually, without weight. A birthday dinner for her son, a small restaurant downtown, candlelight, music, a reservation made long ago. Then came the line, calm and rehearsed. Family only. I paused, waiting for her to realize how that sounded. She didn't, so I said what was expected. I understand. At the time, I thought I did. I understood the child. I understood co-parenting. What I hadn't understood yet was how easily a marriage could function without acknowledging my place in it. Later that evening, I watched them leave. Not rushed, not awkward. Put together, laughing, comfortable. Like this version of their family required no adjustments for my absence. When the door closed, the house didn't feel empty. It felt honest. Quiet in a way that stripped things down to what they really were. I sat at the kitchen table, the words "family only" repeating in my head, no longer sounding accidental. I thought about all the ways I had been there, school mornings, homework nights, sick days, the unremarkable consistency no one applauds. I never tried to replace anyone. I just stayed. That was the problem. It wasn't the dinner that unsettled me. It was how natural the exclusion felt. No discussion, no hesitation. Just an unspoken agreement that I existed on the outside of certain moments, even in my own home. I didn't ask why. I didn't need the answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and started looking at my life without assuming permanence where none had been promised. With distance, patterns became obvious. This wasn't a single decision. It was a habit. Plans formed without me. Emotional borders drawn carefully around shared memories I supported, but was never meant to enter. Patience, I realized, can quietly turn into erasure if no one is protecting it. That night, there was no drama, no anger, just clarity. I reviewed numbers, documents, commitments, not impulsively, but deliberately. Respect rarely vanishes all at once. It fades when it's taken for granted. Somewhere along the way, my role had shifted into something background, dependable, optional. Recognizing that hurt. But it also simplified things. I didn't need to argue for inclusion. I needed to decide what I was willing to accept. While they sat under soft lights, celebrating, I packed only what mattered. Everything else stayed behind, suddenly feeling borrowed rather than owned. I didn't leave a note. Explanations invite negotiations, and I wasn't negotiating anymore. I left an envelope on the counter, visible, organized, final. No emotion inside it, just decisions already made. I locked the door and walked out. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt aligned. Sometimes the strongest boundaries are set quietly, without witnesses or speeches. I didn't leave to make a point. I left because staying meant continuing to agree with a version of myself I no longer recognized. They came back late, carrying stories, half-finished laughter, and the comfort of routine. They expected the house to meet them the way it always had. Instead, it met them with silence. And the envelope. My wife opened it first. At first, there was a polite smile, the kind people wear when they expect something harmless. Then it faded. Line by line, certainty replaced confusion. What she was reading wasn't anger. It wasn't accusation. It was clarity. The documents were simple. Separation, boundaries, a decision to step away from a marriage where family had been defined without me. No blame, no emotional language, just truth laid out carefully. She called my phone immediately. Voicemail, then messages, confused at first, then urgent. Her ex-husband stood nearby, uncomfortable, realizing this moment had nothing to do with him, yet understanding he had unknowingly helped shape it. The celebration ended not with conflict, but with consequence. Not because I was excluded once, but because I finally stopped excluding myself from my own life. That night, I stayed somewhere quiet, somewhere I didn't have to explain who I was or where I stood. I slept deeply, the kind of sleep that comes after a long internal argument finally ends. By morning, the messages continued. Questions, regret, attempts to soften something that had already settled into place. I didn't answer right away. Decisions deserve space. When I finally responded, my words were brief and calm. I told her I understood why she made her choice, and I asked her to understand why I made mine. Love doesn't vanish because of one moment, but respect can, and once respect is gone, love has nowhere safe to stand. I wasn't angry at her son. I wasn't competing with her past. I was choosing a future where I wasn't an afterthought. That distinction mattered more than anything she could say. In the weeks that followed, reality replaced emotion. Logistics took the place of long conversations. When we spoke, it was focused, contained. She admitted she had never meant to hurt me, only to keep things simple. I told her simplicity should never come at the cost of someone's dignity. She asked if there was a way back. I told her there was a way forward, but not together. Some lessons arrive too late to undo the damage, but not too late to prevent repeating it. Walking away didn't erase the good years we shared. It placed them in context. I hadn't failed as a husband. I had simply reached the limit of what quiet understanding can carry. Letting go wasn't bitterness. It was self-respect, finally catching up to reality. Looking back, that birthday dinner wasn't exclusion. It was revelation. It showed me exactly where I stood, without argument, without denial. Saying, "I understand," wasn't weakness. It was the moment I accepted the truth and acted on it. The surprise I left behind wasn't meant to shock anyone. It was meant to close a story that had quietly stopped being fair. Families can be complex, blended, imperfect, but no one should feel optional in their own marriage. I didn't leave loudly. I didn't demand apologies. I simply stopped explaining my worth. And sometimes the most unexpected surprise you can leave behind is the certainty that you will no longer stay where you don't fully belong. Time passed quietly after that. Not empty, just honest. Mornings arrived without tension. Evenings no longer required explanations. I rebuilt routines that didn't depend on being tolerated or included by permission. There was no dramatic transformation, no sudden happiness, just stability. And for the first time in a long while, stability felt like enough. Occasionally, she reached out, not to argue, not to blame, mostly to acknowledge what had been lost. I listened without reopening doors. Some endings don't need bitterness to be real. They only need acceptance. We spoke like two people who finally understood each other, just too late to change the outcome. I didn't rewrite the past or pretend I was perfect. I simply stopped shrinking myself to fit into a life that had already moved on without me. Distance gave me something clarity never could while I was inside it. Perspective. I could see now that love without place eventually becomes obligation, and obligation, no matter how quiet, slowly erodes dignity. There were moments of doubt, not about leaving, but about why I stayed as long as I did. The answer was simple. I believed patience would eventually be returned. I was wrong. Patience is not a currency. It doesn't accumulate interest. It only works when it's mutual. The house I left behind continued without me. So did I. That was the proof. I wasn't essential to their version of family, and they weren't essential to my sense of self. Realizing that wasn't painful anymore. It was freeing. I didn't walk away to be alone. I walked away to be whole. There is a difference. Solitude chosen is not loneliness. It's alignment, and alignment is quiet, steady, and strong. That birthday dinner marked the end of something, but not because of who was invited or who wasn't. It ended because I finally answered a question I had avoided for years. What does it cost me to stay? Once I knew the price, leaving became simple. This isn't a story about loss. It's a story about limits, about the moment understanding stops being virtue and starts becoming self-erasure. I didn't leave in anger. I left in truth. And truth, once seen clearly, doesn't ask to be ignored again.